what's poppin' YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be going over the Temporal Forces competitive buy list. These are the cards that you're going to want to pick up when you're going to your local game store or supporting the squad by checking out the description and picking up cards from any of our available sponsors, discounts included. That being said, give this video a like, share, subscribe, and let's jump into this list. I'll fully explain why every single card is on here. So in Temporal Forces, there are a lot of cards that are good. I'm going to be splitting cards up in different categories, but as I go through here, it's going to be kind of a straight shot of all the cards that are playable and or must-haves in some capacity. The first card that I want to start off with is none other than the Torterra EX line from this set. Now, there's a Turtwig, that's okay. I mean, it's the best Turtwig that we have so far. There's a Grotto that we actually want to have from Brilliant Stars. But the reason why we're looking at Torterra is because it has a lot of HP. It does 30 damage for each grass Pokemon you have in play. So we can kind of have this Torterra archetypes. This would probably fall more under the playable category than a must-have. But I do think there's a world where Torterra can be especially powerful, because there's also a Whimsicott from this set that says when you play this card from your hand to evolve your Pokemon during your next turn, you may heal all damage from your active grass Pokemon. You discard all energies, but considering Torterra only costs 1 energy to use the attack, certainly there's some opportunities there. At the end of this video, I'm going to be compiling everything into an easy kind of image that you can screenshot. It's also available on our Patreon if you haven't checked out our Patreon at patreon.com/tsswin already before this video is even actually made. So we have a lot of great information there. So I'm going to be compiling everything into a list. Just listen, turn this on, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And also be sure to let us know what you feel in the comments. So that's really our first thing that we're looking at. Our next combination is going to be the Rabska line from this set. So we want to pick up the Rellor from this set because it's slightly better than our other options. Rabska is kind of like Jirachi and Manaphy put together as a stage 1 Pokemon. Prevent all damage and effects of attacks done to your bench Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. It's not necessarily a must-have, but it's a card that you might want to have on your collection in case there's something like you want it, like you don't need to worry about Radiant Greninja and Sableye. Now, Rabska might be an issue itself, like they can knock it out and it's a stage 1, like it comes with its own drawbacks, but it has a huge plus of being able to block a lot of stuff, and depending on how our format turns, there's a lot of opportunities for Rabska to see some success. One of my favorite cards from the set is Iron Leaf's EX. Now, Iron Leaf's EX, it doesn't necessarily have its own deck that it fits into, but I think it could fit into a variety of decks, including Arctina, Lost Tina, maybe some Gouging Fire lists, like any decks that have ways to accelerate energies. We could drop it down, use the ability, bring it active, grab those grass energies. And the reason why this is relevant is because you are strong against Charizard EX, Roaring Moon. 180 does a lot of damage, and you could do 180 and increase it with some other damage modifiers like Maximum Belt or Iron Crown EX that we'll get over into a little bit more later on. But Iron Leaf's EX is probably my personal favorite from this set when it comes to Pokemon in general. Kind of a card that, like, as I'm looking through the set, my early vibe is if I'm going to EUIC, Iron Leaf's EX is the card that I want to play. Not sure if I'm going to get there or not, but we'll see how it plays out. Kind of scrolling through the set, the next cards that we have are Incineroar EX. Now, I think this card's lightly playable. Its attacks used by this Pokemon cost colorless less for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. We also have an opportunity to maybe play it with Relicanth from this set. Then I'll get over into a little bit that allows us to use our previously, like our basic and stage 1 evolution Pokemon. We can use the lower stages, and there's a Litten that does things for damage counters on it that came out, I believe, in Silver Tempest. Again, those are included all on our playables and buy lists and whatever, so anything that's also become good due to a new evolution line is going to be good. I'm not going to include things like, hey, I think Slitherwing from Paradox Rift became better because of Ancient Box. Like, obviously use your own judgment when it comes to Pokemon, but whenever there's a new line, I will include the little ones that are worthwhile to go over. Now, So we can basically attack for free when it comes to some of our other attacks, including that Litten. We have 320 HP. I think it's cool. I think there's some opportunities there with Incineroar. Might be like a tier 3 deck, might be a tier 2 deck. We'll have to see. These things can sometimes like really blur the lines. Continuing down, Gouging Fire I think is slightly better than what we have for Incineroar, to the point where I think it's a must-have. Doing 260 damage and being ancient Pokemon means that we could use Professor Seta's Vitality to accelerate energies to this Pokemon. I actually put out a deck profile the other day that features both Gouging Fire EX and Iron Leaves EX because they work well together with the Professor Seta's Vitality. Obviously both ancient and future, but Iron Leaves can grab those energies that you accelerate in play, bust in, and knock out a Charizard EX. Gouging Fire being able to hit 260. Also, there's damage modifiers, Iron Valiant EX, Moltres from Pogo. There's opportunities to bring this 260 up a little bit more and score some knockouts. Another interesting card that I don't think enough people are talking about, including myself, is Feraligatr. So the whole line, because it's the only viable Feraligatr line with Totodile and Croconaw. Once during your turn, you may put 5 damage counters on this Pokemon. If you do, attacks used by this Pokemon do 120 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So we can do 120 damage. It already does 160, so 280 on a single prize card Pokemon is a lot. I just think that there's some opportunities there. There's some lists from Japan. Something that it's like on my to-do list of creating a deck for it. I'm not sure where I'll get to it, but we will get to it at some points. Things become a little bit dry for a while as we go through the set. There's Walking Wakey X. Damage from attacks used by this Pokemon isn't affected by any other effects, so this can go through a Mimikyu. It's kind of cool. Water Colorless, 120. If your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a special condition, this attack does 120 more damage. I'm not sure if it's the best attacker in the game. You might want to have 1 or 2 copies of this card just in case you're playing a water deck. You want to go through something else. I've heard of some strategies of Kyurem VMAX and maybe Cryptomaniac's Deciphering when it comes down to a card like this, because we have ways to accelerate energies. This might work with Brute Bonnets. Like, there's some things that you could cook with this card. I just don't think it's as full-fledged as Iron Leaves or any of the other cards that we've seen. Scrolling on, I mean, it gets a little dry when it comes to Lightning. I think Iron Hands could be okay in maybe a Future Box deck, maybe a Miraidon deck, being able to hit 80 plus 80 for Lightning Colorless. We can power that up with Electric Generator. Maybe making your opponent's active Pokemon paralyzed. I think that could be cool. Same thing, Iron Thorns. Like, Iron Thorns is like the Future Box of our opponent playing playing Kyogre. So you reveal the top 5 cards, you do 70 times for each future card you find there, then discard the revealed future cards. So instead of playing Energy Recycler before using Kyogre, we could maybe use Super Rod, put in 3 cards. And I mean, we're not doing 250, we're doing maybe, we can maybe knock out our opponent's active. This could be cool, and I think Iron Thorns could be cool. It's a card that, like, it's either bad or it's, like, super underrated, and I don't know which one it is. Not a must-have, but definitely underplayables. I think it's also the ETB promo for one of the ETBs from Temporal Forces, so just pick it up. Like, the card is going to be worth 20 cents for having an alt-art version of this card. Probably a worthwhile pickup. Going into Psychics, I think that the Reuniclus line is really interesting. That's a card that if you put an Electric Generator, and you're like, Zach, you're about to get electrocuted, spell this Pokemon. I could not spell it. It took me a while to get it on this list, and I hope I spelled it right for all y'all. For a Colorless Energy, look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put any number of Pokemon you find there onto your bench. Those could be Stage 2s. I think that this is a card that you could really cook up a cool list. I don't know if it's like cook up a cool list for EUIC or Orlando regionals. Might be cook up a cool list for your league challenge or something. Honestly, unsure of how playable this card is, but it's a card like this that, like, you want to own, because, like, you can't find this at a vendor at a regionals. Like, maybe you could, but, like, it's a card that, like, 3 years from now it's still going to be playable, and we don't know what's going to be released. Pokemon always get released. So Reuniclus could only almost get better from time unless there's a card that has a better effect than it. Unique effects are often like underutilized in this game, and I think there's some opportunities there. There's a couple other cool cards. I think Fluttermane's kind of cool. It's really good in the Ancient Box archetype, allowing us to have other ancient Pokemon that we could put in play to do extra damage with Koraidon. We also can maybe shut down Comfey or some other abilities that are worthwhile. So it has some places in some kind of a half control-esque element of ability lock. It has some opportunities in terms of just like slowing our opponent down and maybe doing some damage. Like we have ways to accelerate energies to it because it is ancient. We could use Professor Seta's. It's cool. I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's played in some major archetypes going forward, so that makes it more of a must-have. Beyond that, I think it's more of a support role than being the main star of the deck, but it's cool to see Fluttermane get some action. And I think I'm finally at the point now, just so everyone knows, I don't know how everyone else feels, and let me know how you feel. Are you finally getting used to the Paradox Pokemon? Because as a kid who grew up in the 90s, like, I'm 32 years old now. I know I sound ancient, and I'm just an old head now. I'm finally getting to the point where I know what Paradox Pokemon are called, and it took me this long, where I finally now understand which each one is. So let me know how you feel about the Paradox Pokemon, and how you are good at naming them now. Iron Valiant, there's 2 in this set. The first one I'm looking at is Majestic Sword. So if you played a future supporter card from your hand, it does 100 plus 100. This could be good in a future box deck. Not sure entirely where it fits in, but definitely fits in somewhere. Iron Valiant does 20 damage. The other one with twin lasers does 20 damage. This attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, so 20 and 20. That's also good in a way. Like, I think both of these Iron Valiants are kind of like semi-playable. I don't have them in my list right now. But like, they're not cards that I don't want to own. Like, they're cards that I definitely will bring with me to a tournament and have them in like an ETB, or I've really been carrying around like some Ultimate Guard like archives that can hold my extra cards. So if I ever want to change up my deck before a League Cup or something, or if I'm traveling to EUIC, I'm going to bring some extra cards because I never know if I'm going to play a card like these. Like, these cards are definitely playable. They're just not like staples in decks right now. Iron Crown EX is probably our next big staple card. Your future Pokemon's attacks, except any Iron Crown EX, do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, allowing our future Pokemon to do a lot of damage. Iron Hands EX comes to mind. We're not really going to be attacking with this, but there's opportunities to increase Iron Hands and Iron Leafs. I think those are the 2 best future Pokemon that can attack right now. Up next, we got Relicanth. So each of your evolved Pokemon can use any attack from its previous evolutions. I'm sure if you look strongly enough through some viable Pokemon, or even some currently non-viable Pokemon, we could find some interesting opportunities to attack, such as the Incineroar EX from this set, with the Litten from Silver Tempest, I believe, or whichever set, the one that you could kind of, for every damage counter on it, can be cool. Relicanth's only going to be as good as it's good, but we have seen cards like Memory Capsule or Memory whatever see success in the past. I think that Relicanth could be okay. Dribbler is when you play this card from your hand, you may search your deck for 3 basic fighting and discard them. There's some opportunities where decks can get back fighting energies, such as Sandy Shock's EX from Paradox Rift. I think that Dribbler is an interesting card that I probably want to own one of, and just have that card around me just in case. I don't know if it's a staple or not, but it's semi-playable to the point where its effect is unique. And that's one thing that you might see as a reoccurring theme. Like, you might be like, Zach, there's a lot of cards you're going over here, and these all aren't going to be playable. 100% they're not all going to be playable. But these are cards that I can envision in the next 3 years seeing success to some degree. Or in some unique situation, they could become good. Like, I'm not building a Reuniclus deck right now, but it's a card that I want to pick up when the set comes out. I mean, arguably, like, rares are like, what, 20 cents at my locals? I'm sure that it's not going to break my bank to have a playset of that card. But obviously, everyone should live within their own means. The next card is the Great Tusk with the Ground Collapse Mill attack. So discarding the top card of your opponent's deck. If you play an Ancient Supporter card, this discard 3 more cards. Honestly, this is the type of card where we are wanting to pitch a bunch of cards from our opponent's deck. This is actually a tech in some ancient box decks. It's also a full-fledged mill deck that's seen success at the Japanese Championship League tournaments. So, Great Tusk, doing great things. I think it's actually a really good card. Sandy Shocks in this set, I've looked at it a few times, and I could see it being okay in maybe some kind of Sandy Shocks EX deck, and then we can get over it a little bit more. But doing 20 plus 70, if you have 3 or more energy in play, maybe we have a way to accelerate a bunch of energies and turn one hit for 90, or just have a single prizer that can hit for 90. Honestly, not bad in decks that are predominantly 2 prizers. I could see it being okay. Another card that I could see being okay, or like slightly more than okay, is Iron Boulder EX. It does 60 damage for the 2 energies during your opponent's next turn. If it's damaged by an attack, they take 8 damage counters. Otherwise, Power Stomp does 200 damage, discard 2 energies from this Pokemon. It's a future Pokemon. We might be able to accelerate energies to this Pokemon pretty easily. It's also fighting type, giving us some opportunities. So we have some opportunities to accelerate energies, different energy types, and Iron Boulder EX could be cool. That's really all it is. Probably, like, there's some other cards that are, like, okay, but, like, the next card that I like is Frigoraph. I think that's how I'm pronouncing it, Frigoraph EX. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks by your opponent's basic Pokemon EX. A little bit specific, but there's a lot of cool things that you could do with this. Like, if you put a Mist Energy, Roaring Moon EX can no longer touch it. Now, there's a lot of decks that also play basic Pokemon or other Pokemon that are not EXs that might be able to do something. I think that cards like this are typically pretty good, especially when it comes to control decks. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Snorlax deck that ran a 1/1 line or a 2/2 line of this see success. That's really where this card, I think, fits in some kind of mill, control, stall block kind of deck. Like, those are where I think Frigoraph EX plays in. Roaring Moon is up next. Not Roaring Moon EX that I just talked about. Roaring Moon from Temporal Forces. Doing 70 plus for each, 70 plus 10 for each ancient card that's in your discard pile. I've been able to see this card do like 280 damage or more when you get to the mids of the game. So this is why it's being played in its own decks with Roaring Moon EX, or maybe Koraidon, or both in an ancient box deck. Really solid attacker in ways to power it up with Professor Sada's Dark Patch. Got a lot of opportunities for this card to see success. I also kind of like the Matang from this deck, or from this set. Its Metal Maker ability says you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, attach any basic metal energies you find there to your Pokemon any way you like, and then you shuffle the other cards and put them at the bottom of your deck. I can see this working with Cryptomaniac's Deciphering, so we're able to accelerate energies to our metal Pokemon. I don't know which metal Pokemon I want to power up. Maybe Origin Form Dialga V-Star would be that opportunity, but we'll have to find out. Let me know what you think about Matang, because this is one where I'm like, I just don't know how good this is going to be. But let me know. I really want to know your thoughts on it. The next card that I think is kind of cool is Iron Treads. It has the ability dual core, so if you have a future booster energy capsule attached to it, it's both fighting and metal type. Metal colorless, 60 move and energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. I'm not sure if this card's ever going to see success, but having a 2 energy attack, being dual type, I don't see it being terrible. And maybe we can do enough damage where we can knock out an Arceus V if we can have a couple Iron Crown outs. And I think Future Booster allows us to do plus 20, so that's kind of cool. Koraidon, being in the Dragon types now, Primeval Battering does 30 for each ancient Pokemon in play. This card seeing some play in some ancient box decks, being able to hit for 150, 180, whatever, as early as turn 1 if you go second. I think Koraidon's pretty pivotal there. Like, we're literally like hitting 150, 180 turn 1, turn 2 from this card. As a single prizer, that's a strong amount of damage. These kind of little big punch decks, as I like to call them, with single prizers, really powerful. There's also a Koraidon EX that is less successful. Its energy count is fire, fighting, kind of awkward, but it swings for 280. It also takes 60 to itself, but I mean, I think it could be okay. I think that's really where it's at. Like, I think it could be okay to the point where I want to pick up a couple copies. Slightly playable, not must have, like Koraidon. But Koraidon EX can certainly be cool. There's also a Miraidon, because everywhere they come in pairs, right? Like, there wouldn't be a Seviper without a Zangoose. There's not going to be a Miraidon without a Koraidon. Doing 40 damage and searching for 2 basic energy cards and attaching to your future Pokemon wherever you like is busted. We've already seen this deck do well in Japan at the Champions League, powering up Iron Hands. So you're turn 2 Iron Handsing your opponent literally every game, and you still have Electric Generator. And there's some other cards in the set that make that deck good. Just literally fantastic across the board, very good. There's also Miraidon EX, so Repulsion Bolt 60 plus. If they have any damage counters, you're doing 160 for 2. You do 220 for Lightning, Psychic, Colorless. Also works with Iron Crown. Also works with Future Booster Energy Capsule. Slightly playable. Don't really have a spot for it because it's probably better to draw extra prize cards with Iron Hands. But Miraidon's all sweet. Raging Bolts EX. So doing 70 damage for any, you may discard any basic energy cards from your Pokemon. You do 70 for each card you discard in this way. We've seen it with Sandy Shocks. We've seen it with Gardevoir EX in Japan. Not really performing where we want it to be, but I think a card like this only gets better with time, because we haven't figured out the list yet. I don't know if I want to be like full-on coping here. This is arguably like the card that I'm the most excited for when it comes to my dream big about the set. This is like if Blacephalon GX, my claim to fame. I don't know, my camera's a little tiny. I got a bunch of trophies back there that I got from Blacephalon GX back from the Lost Thunder set. Raging Bolt EX really reminds me of that card, and I hope that allows me to see success with it again. There's a Dunsparce in the set that says once during your turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you do, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached into your deck. I think being able to have a consistent draw engine, you don't deck out, you could draw through. I don't see a world where Dunsparce is bad. I don't see a world where it's like played instantly, but this is a card that will see success in its timeline. And you probably want to pick them up early because, again, a lot of these cards are not going to necessarily be easy to find. Really, really cool card. Like, it's easy to find at the beginning. I just mean, like, it's not going to be easy to find in 2 years. The same way that I'm trying to look for Mantine from Astral Radiance to build Snorlax control now. Try going to your big game store and being like, hey, do you have a bulk bin that I can look through? Is it sorted? Like, that's really where Dunsparce is going to be in a few years. I think the Chinchino from this set is absolutely fantastic. Lugia V-Star gets a new partner. We're able to do special roll, doing 70 damage for each special energy card attached to this Pokemon. Both myself and Dom, the person that's editing this video, played it to a Temporal Forces win-a-box north of Toronto. And we hit each other in the top 8. Dom beat me because he's the coin flip god. Shout out Dom. And yeah, it's one of those things where Chinchino is very good. It won the Japanese Champions League. So Lugia Chinchino, arguably the best deck right now that we have in formats of our Temporal Forces post-rotation. Now we're getting into the trainer cards. Pick up all the ace specs. Honestly, they're just like a one-of card that you could play in your deck if you haven't really got to it before. Awakening Drum, draw a card for each of your ancient Pokemon in play. Obviously, we're going to want to play this with some ancient Pokemon in an ancient box deck. You might want to play it in Roaring Moon if you don't play Prime Catcher, but all of them have opportunities, and most decks have 1 to 2 that you can really play, and that's really going to take a hard slot out of your 60 cards. Bianca's Sincerity is heal all damage from one of your Pokemon that has 30 HP or less. I don't know which situation this card's going to be played in, but this card could be busted in the right situation, kind of like how Cheryl or Professor Turo or Charon's Care have kind of seen fringe playability over the years. I think Bianca's Sincerity is going to be a 1 or 2 of card where maybe your opponent cannot get the knockout ever because of certain HP, so they either don't attack or they attack with a light amount. There's some opportunities here with Bianca's Sincerity. Probably want to pick up a couple copies. Buddy Poffin, or as it's been since translated to Buddy Poffin. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less and put them onto your bench. This card is really our direct replacement for Battle VIP Pass in our post-rotation formats. Most decks are playing 70 HP or less Pokemon, but you are not reliant on your turn 1 to play Battle VIP Pass. You can now play Buddy Poffin anytime throughout the game, making it more of a stable card and making decks a little bit more consistent and a little bit less broken. Because if the issue with Battle VIP Pass is if players were to get it out turn 1, they absolutely would like be dominating the board. And if you miss, you're probably in a rough spot. If you do not miss, like, I mean, in this case, Buddy Poffin is you get it, and you could also recover because you could play it throughout the entire game. It's no longer a dead card after turn 1. We got Cryptomaniac's Deciphering. There's also, like, the other translation of it is Codebreaker's Solution. I like Cryptomaniac. I think it's funnier. A direct reprint of Mallow from the Sun and Moon era. Search your deck for 2 cards, shuffle your deck, and put those cards on top in any order. In a world where we have the barrel, cards that can manipulate the top 2 cards of your deck, we could really draw whatever we want. Cryptomaniac's Deciphering is probably a staple. I could easily see it being a 2-of in a lot of decks. It just really depends on the decks that you're playing. I think Dangerous Jungle is kind of cool. 2 more damage counters for each poison Pokemon, except for any dark Pokemon. In a poison deck, you probably want to play this. Special conditions usually suck, unfortunately. But when sometimes they pop up in decks like Cloth, I wouldn't be surprised if Cloth played something like this if it was still viable. Unfortunately, it loses Spicy, Seasoned Curry in our post-rotation formats. Even though it's from Astral Radiance, I just literally organized all my cards the other day. Yeah, it's a whole different thing. But yeah, it's Dangerous Jungle could be okay. Emergency Board, the retreat cost of this Pokemon this card is attached to is Colorless Less. If that Pokemon is 30 HP or less remaining, it has no retreat cost instead. I honestly think Emergency Board is kind of cool. We could put it in a lot of Lost Zone box decks. I see it just in a lot of different decks. Like, we lost Escape Rope. We have Emergency Board. It's not a direct replacement, but it's in the same way that we've had other things like Escape Board in the past and other switching cards. This falls into that category. This card will be played. Eerie is probably going to be the bane of our existence. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose up to 2 item cards you find there and discard them. Somewhere in the world, Cal Connor is laughing at you behind a Snorlax. I think that Eerie is very powerful. I don't know how many copies we want to have. Might as well just pick up 4. This card is going to be worth like 5 cents. Really interesting card though, and any disruption is fantastic. We have Explorer's Guidance. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, put 2 of them into your hand, discard the other cards. We're really seeing a lot of play in Great Tusk Mill, Ancient Box. Like, any ancient type deck is really probably going to play this. Also, a direct reprint of Hapu, I believe, from Unified Minds, giving us an opportunity to have some new cards to play around with. We have Full Metal Lab, all metal Pokemon, both yours and your opponents take 30 less damage from your opponent's Pokemon. If metal becomes viable, Full Metal Lab can be cool. Maybe we'll see this in a Goldango EX deck that's seeing some success in Japan. Honestly, not sure. Pretty light need compared to like Buddy Poffin, but it's cool. Hand Trimmer is a card that's really kind of evading my mind because I currently have 0 decks. I have 20 plus decks built. 0 of them play Hand Trimmer, but each player discards card until they have 5 in their hands. Your opponent discards first. It's really cool. There's a lot of effects here. I think that this card is very good. I don't know if it's a must-have. I might have put it as a must-have. I'm honestly not sure. I think I put it as a must-have. It will be good in some capacity. Heavy Baton is an interesting card. If the Pokemon that this retreat cost of exactly 4 is attached to is your active Pokemon is knocked out. A lot of things that you have to have from your opponent's Pokemon, and it has to be knocked out by damage. Move up to 3 basic energy cards from that Pokemon to your bench Pokemon. This card basically reads as, if this is attached to an Iron Hands EX, and Iron Hands is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, take the 3 energies and move them to another Iron Hands EX. That's really how it's seeing play in Japan. I don't know which other 4 energy retreat cost Pokemon are good. Heavy Baton could be kind of good though, and look for opportunities to abuse this card because moving that many energies is awesome. Hero's Cape is seeing a lot of success in control decks or some kind of slow, like, heal manipulation decks like Gudra. The Pokemon this card's attached to gets plus 100 HP. Honestly, like, you could Lost Vacuum this off. It's hard to search out because it's a Pokemon tool, but it is quite good. We got Master Ball up next. Search your deck for a Pokemon and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. It's a reprint of Master Ball from Plasma Blast. Being able to search your deck for a Pokemon is not the greatest effect on A-Spec, but it is sometimes the best option to play in a deck like Lugia, so you can get out those Archeops in your discard pile very quickly. We have Maximum Belt up next, being able to do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. This is already seeing some play in Arceus V-Star Giratina decks. Charizard EX decks, like there's a lot of opportunities to just do extra plus 50 in the right situation. This could change anything. This is probably the closest card, like when I think about like VGC compared to TCG, changing stat boosts on a card literally allows us to change the dynamic of what our deck can do. So I always talk about people with their IV spreads, their EV spreads, like whatever. Maximum Belt is very good when it comes to TCG. Morty's Conviction. Pitching a card from your hand, usually good in Pokemon because we have ways to get cards back. There's a lot of cards like Roaring Moon that deal with things from your discard pile. Just draw a card for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. We're in a format where a lot of people are just stock putting 5, so literally saying draw 5, very good supporter card. Might not be as good as Professor's Research or Iono, but probably like coming in like 3rd or 4th for draw. Order Box is interesting. I think this card's kind of bad, but it might be good. Search your deck for 2 item cards, reveal them, and put them into your hands. I could see some kind of like control deck playing this. I'm not sure if you're just going to end your turn anyways. Order Box could be quite good. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to figure it out. Then your turn ends. It's not just search your deck for 2 item cards, because otherwise that'd be broken, sick, crazy. Let me know what you think about Order Box if you got to this point. I mean, if you're still watching, you're a real one, but we're almost there. Yeah, Order Box seems kind of cool. Prime Catcher, switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. If you do, switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. Arguably the best A-Spec, bringing up whatever you want. This is a Guzma. Literally like reprints as an item card. Broken. We got Reboot Pod. Attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to each of your future Pokemon in play. Play this in a future deck. Literally, like, if you're not going to play something else, this is probably the one by default you want to play. But there's a lot of opportunities there to see success with Reboot Pod. Accelerating energies to, like, your opponents, to your Iron Hands, or to your Iron Leaves. Like, there's opportunities there. Salvatore, or Salvatore, I'm honestly not sure how it's pronounced. We'll go with Salvatore. Or our pal Sal. We'll call it Sal. Search your deck for a Pokemon, accept any Pokemon with an ability that evolves from one of your Pokemon in play, and put it onto that Pokemon, evolve it. Then shuffle your deck. You can use this on a card that was just put into play, so we have a way to get out a turn 1 Noivern EX or something, because it does not have an ability. Interesting card. I'm not sure where it's going to see success. Currently don't see a lot of play. Maybe it will see some play in the future. Could be very good in other formats like Expanded, GLC, whatever. I think it's interesting enough. I'm gonna buy them. I just don't know where I'm gonna be putting it. Miss Energy, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless. Prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon this card is attached to. Miss Energy is literally one of those cards where I want to put in a lot of decks. I mean, our opponent can no longer hit us with Sableye. Our opponent can no longer hit us with Roaring Moon EX. Our opponent can no longer hit us with Technical Machine De-Evolution. Mist Energy is very good in this game. Seeing a lot of success in Lugia, Charizard, Gudra decks. Like, Mist Energy is a very good card. The last card that we have in this set is Neo Upper Energy. Currently not seeing any play from what I can tell in Japan. If this card is attached to a Stage 2 Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but only provides 2 energy at a time. Being put on a Stage 2 Pokemon is tough because Stage 2 Pokemon aren't always good. Maybe I'd put this like in the Feraligatr deck that I was talking about earlier. Like, there's a handful of decks that I could see this being played in, to the point where you want to pick one up just because it's worthwhile. And you can only play one A-Spec, so just get one of each A-Spec and you're good for life. Neo Upper Energy seems kind of okay. So let me know what you think about these cards. I think these are the best cards. So if you ever wanted like the 20-30 minute cliff notes of the sets, that's what we got, going all the way from the best cards to whatever, not in any order. But let me jump into the must-haves and the playables. So these are the playables that we have from the set. Feel free to take a screenshot. This is also available, and it's been available for a hot minute for all of the TSS Patreons. Also, my own personal Patrons. I do a lot of information for both. So if you're supporting me at ZachLasage on Patreon or TSS Win on Patreon, you probably already have access to this. Take a screenshot of this. This is exactly what you want. All the sets are available. If it's not from the particular sets, So you can see something like the Grotle or the Litten or the Torcad. Those are the better versions, and you might want to pick them up next time you're scouring through a bulk bin of the set that you're looking through. Very, very interesting and very worthwhile to pick up these cards in general. Like, obviously live within your means. The other cards that we have going on here are going to be the must-haves when it comes down to it. So take the screenshot before we switch things up. There's our must-haves. Again, this takes all the cards that we went through and we've put them in a fancy list. So take a screenshot on your phone, on your computer. Again, it's available in the TSS Patreon or the Zach Lesage Patreon. These give you access to everything, and it's a good way to finish off the video. That being said, this is what we have. We already covered why these cards are good, which decks are good. I've been covering the videos along with the rest of the team on how these decks are played. We've basically given you a complete guide of the early Temporal Forces metagame as much as possible. So I hope that that's really helped you out on your journey. Our sponsors do have these cards available for pre-order a lot of the times. Code cards from PTCGL store. I mean, maybe get a new deck box from Ultimate Guard to match the green from Iron Leaf EX. Whatever you really want to do, help support the squad. You know what I'm saying? But that's what we got. Let me close things out. And that's what we got going on with these lists. Be sure to check them out. I mean, I just put them in the last slide before this, so I hope that you enjoyed seeing exactly what we got going on. But again, really appreciate everyone watching this video. I will catch up with all y'all later. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. Hey trainers, tired of having too many cards lying around? I know that feeling, and I know what a hassle it is to try and sell those cards. But selling bulk is now easier than ever with TCG Bulk. Find tons of potential buyers in a single place. You just download the app, look for the best buyer near you, and carefully pack your bulk, ship it, and you get paid. It really is that simple. Turn the cards you don't want into the cards you absolutely need for your next deck. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.